So you should have the blockchain downloaded from part 2. Let's continue with the install now. So the instructions on the PIVX website go through how to configure the remote, the VPS wallets for the other 3 masternodes first. But what I'm going to do is switch and go to how to delegate your 10,000 PIV and get the first masternode up and running, and then we can go back and do the others. Okay, so looking back at the instructions, the next thing it says to do is make sure that you have 10,000 PIV in your wallet, which we've already done. So that should be all set. We can kind of go down a little bit here to this step, which says, okay, we have to go back to the SPMT, the Secure PIVX Masternode tool, and we're going to select New Masternode again. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll select a new masternode from the Masternode list tab, and we get this. Now it's saying we have to fill this in. So we're not just using it to generate a masternode private key. In fact, we've already done that step. We have to fill in the rest. So next step is to copy the masternode private key that we generated earlier from the PIVX config file. So I'm going to get that private key by grepping the config file, so just like I did a grep before. So if I say grep and the name of the token is masternode priv key, and then the file is pivx.conf, and it should show us the results, and it does. Masternode priv key is this, so let's just copy that. And we're going to paste this right where it was generated. Okay, so that's done. And next step, we're going to name the node. So let's see, I'm going to name this one, well, I've got an 8 there. I'm going to name this PIV 009, PIVX 009. Okay, and it's kind of what they mentioned for the naming convention. And next we're going to need the IP address. So this is just the masternode's IP address, and that also is available in the config file. And under PIVX address, we'll put that. Oh, I'm sorry, IP address, we'll put that. And next. Now this part's a little bit tricky. We want to get the account number from Ledger Live that's holding our 10,000 PIV. And in Ledger Live it's actually called the index, and I'll show you how to go ahead and get that. So I've got Ledger Live open. This is the account that's holding the 10,000 PIVX. And in order to get the account number, what's called the account here, you're going to need to go to the wrench here, edit account, and then you're going to need to go to advanced. And then it's actually the index is what's referred to as the account. So you can see here, index is listed as 10. So if I go now back to the SPMT, and I look for the account, this number right here, it's going to be 10. Now the next thing that we're going to need is the PIVX address. So that is the address of your hardware wallet holding the 10,000 PIV. So one easy way to get that is to go to the, you've already made a transaction. You can always say that you like to receive more PIV and set it up through Ledger, but an easier way to do it is look at a previous transaction. So here's the transaction where the 10,000 PIVX was transferred into this account. So if you click on that, It brings this up. It says it was transferred from here to here. So the to address is your public key address for this account. So you can copy it directly in Ledger Live, and then you can enter that into the PIVX address in the SPMT tool. Okay, so far so good. So next, so this is a little bit of a interesting step. You have to capture the address's public key into the public key box through this procedure. With the account number and the PIVX address already entered, which we've already done, and with your ledger connected to your computer. So that actually is a step that we still need to do. Once you've done that, then you're going to click the greater than icon. I can just show you this over here. You're going to click this. But we need to connect the ledger first. I'm going to launch PIVX. Hardware device connected. Okay, so the one thing that needs to be done is you need to make sure that PIVX is sort of running on your hardware wallet, and Ledger Live is closed, and then your device will connect. So good. So now we've got that done, and now we can hit this button and it will generate a public key for us. Found address D9 UB in hardware account 10 with SPath ID 0. So that should do it. And here you see this public key, and it populates it in here for us. This actually should be 9. I made a mistake there. So let's click look up. You have to do this, then select it, and then there you go. Okay, so last step. You're going to click Save. Okay, so now I've saved Masternode 9. And now the last thing to do is to launch it. And to do that, we just are going to click the rocket button. So here we go. Are you sure you want to start Masternode 9? Yes. Confirm. So I'm going to sign the message. I'm looking at the hardware right now, my hardware wallet. Everything looks good. Sign it. Okay. Broadcast start message. And yes, start message was successfully sent to the network. Masternode successfully started. So there we go. We have done the first one. Should be complete and running. And next part of this we'll go through in a much simpler fashion how to then start the subsequent 3. Okay, now that we have the first Masternode up and running, let's go back in and get the other 3 running on the other 3 cores. So I've logged back into Contabo, and I've got the instructions. So I scrolled back up to installing and configuring software for second Masternode. And we're going to go through this. And I'll kind of walk through what we're doing. So the first thing that we need to do is we have the first Masternode, the one that we just started, up and running. And you're going to want to stop that before you go through this procedure. So let's just check and see that it is up and running. So if you do a PS, that checks that the process is up and running. Pipe grep, PIVX, and there it is. So you can see, yep, you've got it running right there. So the first thing we're going to do is stop that. And the way to stop that is go into the bin directory and then call this PIVX CLI command line tool and tell it stop. All right, so I'm just going to cut and paste this and do it exactly as it does it here. Okay, PIVX server is stopping. The next thing to do is remove the debug log. So if I go into the .pivx folder, I'm going to do the first half of this to show you. So if I copy this, and then I take a look at, if I do an ls-al debug.log, we're going to see that file. And it's pretty big, right? Because it just continues to accumulate. So you're going to want to remove that because there's no reason to copy that file over to the other folders that we're going to create. Okay, so that's gone. Now the next thing that we're going to do is let's check and see that this is the process has stopped yet. If the process has stopped yet. And it has, okay. So that means that we're not running PIVX anymore, the PIVX daemon. So we can go on to the next step here. The next step, and I'm just going to copy this even though I'm already in this directory. So technically I don't need to do this first part because it's just going to that directory. The second part is tar, which is tape archive. It's a really old archiving tool that will take the whole directory here and make it into an archive. So I'm going to cut and paste this. Okay, so that process has finished, and now if we look, we should see a pivx.tar file. Where will that be? That will be not in this PIVX directory that we're in, it will be up one. So if we look here, there you go. And you can see it's a pretty big file because it really archived that star means take everything in this directory, and that's the whole blockchain, it's everything. So now we've got that. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create essentially a duplicate folder, but we're going to call it PIVX2, and then this X means extract. So we're actually going to untar that file into this new folder. So we're going to make a new folder called .pivx2. We're going to go into that folder, and then we're going to extract that pivx.tar file that we just created. So let's go ahead and copy this right now. I'm just going to take this whole command. This should be relatively quick now because we've already created the archive. Now, if we had compressed the file, it might be a little bit faster to do this copy, but you know, it's not a significant amount of time. Okay, so the copy's done. Gave me time to get a cup of coffee, come back. Now let's check. So we created the PIVX2 directory. We moved into that directory, and then we untarred that file into the PIVX2 directory. So we're in PIVX2 right now. I just do an ls. Well, looks like everything's there. Now the next command is you want to remove the wallet.dat file because this is going to be, we're going to have a different one for this masternode. So that's the next step, is to just remove that file. Okay, so easy enough. That's done. And now we're going to go ahead and update the config. So that's really the main change for each of the masternodes, is going to be the change to the pivx.conf file. So let's use editor of choice to edit the pivx.conf file. And the username and password can be the same as they were before. And what you're really going to change is take a look at RPC allow IP. This you're going to want to change to, so now we're looking at an IPv6 address. We're just going to put a : 1. Okay, and RPC allow is the same. Now the bind is going to be the new VPSIP. So now the VPSIP for the first masternode was the IPv4 address. The VPSIP for the second master node is going to be the IPv6 address. So to get that, we can go to our control panel through Contabo, and you can see down here, actually it's this one right here, the IPv6 address is this address right here. So this is what we're going to use. And if you follow the instructions, which are right down here, it says note we're configuring to IPv6. The IPv6 notation ends in a :1 following example. So it has the square brackets, and you need to include the square braces. You have to include those in the address. So now we're going to have something that looks like this. I'm going to put in a brace, the IPv6 address, end brace, and then you still need the port information, so that port 51472 stays the same. And that's what we need. We don't need that I in the beginning. I don't know how that got there. And you can now cut and copy and paste this, because you're going to need this in a couple of additional areas. So the external IP is going to be that. And the masternode address is going to be that. But in the masternode address, you're going to keep the port number. So let's just double check that. Okay. That looks good. Looks good. Looks good. Okay. Now, the masternode private key, we don't have that yet. We have to get that, right? So that is going to be generated in the same way that we generated it for the first masternode. What I'm going to do, though, is just save this file as the config file for PIVX2, knowing that we need to generate the masternode key. And what we can do now is, why don't we create the PIVX 3 and 4, get that done right now. I'm going to just do this step. So I'm going to extract that tar file into PIVX 3 and PIVX 4. So I have all 4 directories ready to go. These aren't going to be ready to run yet. There's going to be a little bit of extra work, but I'm going to do that now just to get that out of the way. And I'll do this as the next line. This should execute when that one's done. And when that's done, we'll have all 4 directories. We have the PIVX2 config file almost ready, except for the masternode private key. And we'll get that next, and then we'll do a little bit more work for masternode 3 and 4 and get the private keys for that as well. And we should be good to go. We'll finish up the install in part 4.